July 19, 1992. Palermo, Sicily, a city holding its breath, caught between the scorching summer sun and the cold shadow of fear. This is a story of courage, sacrifice, and a battle fought not on a distant field, but in the very streets where children played. It's the story of a man who knew his time was running out, yet refused to back down. This is the story of Paolo Borsellino. In the complex, interwoven history of Italy's fight against organized crime, certain names resonate with a power that transcends time. They become symbols etched into the collective memory of a nation. Paolo Borsellino was such a man. Alongside his friend and colleague, Giovanni Falcone, he formed the heart of the anti-mafia pool, a group of magistrates determined to dismantle the seemingly invincible Cosa Nostra. They were David against a modern-day Goliath. Their work culminated in the Maxi trial, a judicial masterpiece that brought hundreds of mafiosi to justice. It was an unprecedented victory, a moment when it seemed the state could finally win. But the monster they fought was wounded, not defeated, and it was vengeful. On May 23, 1992, the A29 highway outside Palermo was torn apart by a massive explosion. Giovanni Falcone, his wife, and 3 escort agents were killed. The Capazzi massacre sent a shockwave across Italy and the world. The state had been struck at its very core. In the deafening silence that followed, all eyes turned to one man, Paolo Borsellino. He had lost more than a colleague. He had lost a brother. He knew the crosshairs were now squarely on him. The mafia needed to complete its work, to silence the last great voice of defiance. Friends and family pleaded with him to take a step back, to protect himself. But for Paolo, that was never an option. To retreat would be to betray everything he and Giovanni had fought for. It would be to let the fear win. Instead, he accelerated his work. In the 57 days that separated Falcone's death from his own, Borsellino worked with a feverish intensity, racing against a clock he knew was ticking. He gave interviews. He spoke to students. He continued his investigations, gathering testimonies, trying to piece together the secrets behind the Capacci bombing. He once said, "I am a dead man walking." It wasn't melodrama. It was a stark, chilling reality. He knew the mafia had already passed his sentence. He was simply living on borrowed time, and he was determined to use every second. He became the living embodiment of the state's resistance, a lone sentinel standing against a tidal wave of terror. His presence was a promise. The fight was not over. That Sunday, July 19th, was a typical Sicilian summer day. The air was thick with heat, the streets of Palermo quiet in the late afternoon lull. For Judge Borsellino, it was a rare moment of personal time. After a brief lunch with his wife Agnes and their children, he prepared to visit his elderly mother on Via Mariano de Mil. It was a weekly ritual, a simple act of love and duty. His security detail, a team of dedicated officers who were more like a second family, prepared the armored cars. These men and women were the thin line between him and the ever-present threat. They were aware of the risks, living every day with the same tension that haunted the judge. That afternoon, the team included Agostino Catalano, Vincenzo Li Muli, Walter di Cosina, Claudio Traina, and Emanuela Loi, the first female officer assigned to such a high-risk detail, and the first to die in the line of duty in Italy. As the convoy made its way through the quiet Palermo streets, an invisible net was closing. The assassins had been watching, waiting. They knew his habits, his routines. They had chosen the location with brutal precision. A red Fiat 126, a small, unassuming car, was parked near his mother's apartment building. It was unremarkable, Isali overlooked, but inside, it was packed with around 100 kilograms of Semtex H. A powerful plastic explosive. The trigger was in the hands of a watcher on a nearby hill, overlooking the street, waiting for the signal. The convoy pulled up on Via de Mil. Judge Borsellino got out of his car. He took a few steps towards the entrance of the building. It was a scene that had played out countless times before. The son going to visit his mother, but this time it was the final act. At 4:58 p.m., the world exploded. The trigger was pressed. The Fiat 126 detonated with unimaginable force, unleashing a fireball that engulfed everything in its path. The blast was apocalyptic. It ripped a crater in the road, shattered windows for blocks, and sent a column of black smoke climbing into the sky like a funeral pyre. The armored cars were tossed aside like toys, twisted into unrecognizable shells of burning metal. The sound was a physical blow, a roar that shook the city to its foundations. For a moment, there was just the fire and the smoke. Then, a terrible, profound silence descended, broken only by the crackle of flames and the distant wail of sirens. When the smoke began to clear, the scene was one of utter devastation. Via D'Amelio had become a war zone. Paolo Borsellino was gone, obliterated by the blast. Along with him, the 5 members of his escort perished: Agostino Catalano, Emanuela Loi, Vincenzo Li Muli, Walter, e Cosina, Claudio Traina. Their names became forever bound to his and martyrdom. They were not just statistics. They were individuals with families, hopes, and dreams, sacrificed on the altar of a brutal war. The aftermath was a portrait of national grief. Images of shocked bystanders, of firefighters battling the inferno, of family members collapsing in anguish, were broadcast across the globe. Italy was a nation in mourning, but it was also a nation enraged. The assassinations of Falcone and Borsellino were not just attacks on 2 men. They were a declaration of war against the very idea of a just and lawful society. The Mafia had shown its most savage face, believing it could terrorize the state into submission. But they had miscalculated. The immense public outcry and revulsion that followed the massacres created a wave of anti-mafia sentiment, unlike anything seen before. The government, under immense public pressure, responded with a force and determination that had been lacking. Special laws were passed, and a massive crackdown was initiated, leading to the capture of high-level fugitives, including the boss of bosses, Traina, the man who had ordered the bombings. The deaths of Paolo Borsellino and his colleagues were not in vain. Their sacrifice became a catalyst for change, a turning point in the fight against Cosa Nostra. They awakened the conscience of a nation. Today, their legacy endures. It lives in the work of the magistrates who continue their fight, in the classrooms where teachers speak of their courage, and in the hearts of ordinary citizens who refuse to live in fear. The crater in Via D'Amelio has been filled, but the void left by their deaths remains. Yet, from that void, a powerful call for justice arose, a call that continues to echo through the streets of Sicily and beyond. A reminder that even in the darkest of times, the light of courage can never be extinguished. Thank you for joining us in remembering this pivotal moment in history. If this story moved you, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel for more content that honors the past to inform our future. Stay curious and never forget.